Hi, and welcome to this episode of Consciousness and Me. My name is Josephine, and I thought today we would do a bit of an experimentation together. About the world and the way we experience it, and why we so easily divide it up into a dualistic way of looking at it. So let's start with noticing a thought. Just really going to it. And I would suggest the experience is that it appears within consciousness. Does not come from the outside. It appears within us. And don't just take my word for it, but actually go and check with your own experience. Is that true for you? And if you have any emotion in your, what we usually say, like in your body, like, does that happen within you? Is that inside of you? And here as well, go and check with yourself. See if it's any division. Are you crossing any boundaries to access your emotions? Do they come from any other medium than your internal world? And if you need more time to truly explore this, almost like you're investigating something, like you twist and turn and you see, is it really happening inside of me? Because there is this thing of when we've only understood it with our minds, but our experience still tells us something different, it easily just becomes a narrative that we paste on top of our experiences. And then, at least in my experience, we can only go that deep with our mind. It doesn't quite penetrate down in how we view the world or how we interact with the world, how we enjoy the world. So that's why this invitation is, or this exploration of actually going to the emotion or going through all the things we're going to explore. So the pause button might actually be your friend in this episode if you feel like you need more time to actually go there. So what we've seen so far is that a thought and an emotion happens within us. They appear within the same space. Now, if we go to one of our sense perceptions, let's say a smell. When you smell something, where do you experience that? And this might be difficult if you're not smelling anything, so go sniff something and really explore. I would suggest, but this is a little bit tricky, that the experience actually happens inside of your consciousness. The experience itself, if you drop any ideas of where the smell comes from, but just the actual experience of smelling. It's almost like it occurs in the same space as the thought and the emotion. They're made of different things, or they're not made of they're appear as different things. They're different kind of manifestations, but they're happening within your inner world. And then if you go to sound, where does the experience of sound take place? If you go to the actual experience, imagine you were without any memory, without any past or any future, you were just here, and you were noticing a sound. Does it feel like there's a barrier between the actual knowing of the sound, the noticing of it, the appearance of it, and the space where the thoughts arise. They might look different, they might express themselves differently, but kind of check out if they're happening in the same space, in your internal world, or if there is a boundary anywhere. Do you feel like you're crossing a boundary when you hear a sound? Now, imagine you had no notion of what consciousness was. You had no notion of the world. So you were in this little dark environment. You were in this little floating tube, so you had no sense perception of your skin. So all that was present for you was your emotions and your thoughts, and something you could smell, and a little sound or a little noise as well. Would you draw the conclusion that the thoughts and the emotions are happening inside of me, but these other two stimuli are obviously coming from the outside? And this might be a tricky word, because now I introduce coming from the outside, and our mind immediately jumps to what we know about the world. But see if you can stay in this. You have no notion about the world. You're just going to your raw experiences. Is there anything about the experience of smelling and hearing that would make you suggest that they happened in a different space, in a different field than your thoughts and your emotions? Well, by now you might see what I'm trying to point at. I would suggest it doesn't. I would suggest that the experience is there are sense perceptions. In this case, we explored smell and sound. Is happening within the same field of awareness, the same internal world, as thoughts and emotions. But then you add thought, and all of a sudden an inside and an outside appear, because we've learned that. And I'd like to pause here for a moment, because if you're used to the materialistic way of looking at consciousness, or basically the way our societies usually look at consciousness, then we say that consciousness is what's within me, and I'm okay that it manifests as emotions, and I'm okay that it manifests as thoughts. But it could potentially manifest as a third option that we ourselves just never have experienced. Say it could be an Xing. There could be an internal type of manifestation of my inner world that's not a thought and it's not a feeling. And then I would include that into consciousness. I would include and say that, okay, then it can manifest as these three. But what if there's even more ways consciousness can manifest? What if we opened up to the possibility that consciousness could manifest in ways we normally don't include? And in order to fully comprehend non-duality, we need to drop that view that consciousness is limited to thoughts and emotions. We need to be open to the idea that it can manifest as something else than what we normally point to when we say consciousness. And this is a little bit what we're exploring now. Could it be that consciousness could also manifest as sense perceptions? Smell, sound. But then you could argue that, but they carry different information. And yes, that's true. But so does a thought and an emotion. They don't carry the same kind of information. They appear as a different thing inside of us, and sense perception appears as something else. In combination with how we have observed these perceptions, these other kinds of manifestation of consciousness, when we start to map them together, when we put smell and sound together over when we grow up, we realize that there's certain pattern emerges, and we can play with them. When there's a smell of food, and there's a sound of a bell, then we've realized that, oh, that means that it's probably food coming. And then I can navigate on those impulses. So they carry a lot of information that's useful for us. So in that sense, we can build up. So these are like cues towards something that's external to us. So the sense perceptions, they carry information about something that seems to be outside of our inner world, because that's what we've been observing from growing up, that they have correlation, that there's a certain flow to them. And I'm not denying that, by the way. I think they do. But the thing is that what they are pointing towards is something outside of me, but it does not have to be outside of consciousness. Because what non-duality suggests is that my consciousness is just the localization of an infinite consciousness, of universal consciousness, the one consciousness. So when I become this localization, everything that's not part of my localized little bubble, I guess we can pretend it is, when the rest of the unmanifested universe, or the rest of the universe, even the manifested actually, even other little bubbles, when they bump into my bubble, be it through sounds or through smell or through any other sense perceptions, they make a dimple, they make an impact on my bubble, and I can navigate according to that. But that doesn't mean that just because there's something inside of my bubble and something outside of my bubble, that has to be made of anything other than consciousness. And when we open up to this way of seeing the world, if we let go of the idea that the world has to be made of something other than my inner world is made of, it creates a new way of getting to know ourselves, and it creates a new way of getting to know the world. And one way is to get to know it through the mind. And I guess the main reason for that is just to get it out of the way, to make the old beliefs about ourselves and the world stop us from actually exploring what it is like. And the difference is that everything we learned up till now, how to navigate in this world, that is relevant regardless of what the world is. How to tie my shoelaces is still going to be useful for me, even if I realize that everything around me is consciousness. Because even though the shoelaces is not made of matter, they're made of something, and if I perform the act of tying them, it has an impact on that thing, regardless if it's made of matter or if it's made of consciousness. Like, let's say you play a video game, and you're this little car driving on a highway, and there are different obstacles in the way. If you bump into one of those obstacles, it's going to make your car wobble in the game. But that doesn't mean that there was an actual car bumping against a physical object. It just meant cause and effect, basically. Two things, in this case actually just code in a computer, had certain rules to them, and when they bump in, then they get results from that. And the same is true from the world we live in. And I think this is crucial because it's easy to think that if we throw away our worldview, that we live in a world that's made of something other than consciousness, then we have to throw away our whole interaction with it or the way that we navigate in it. But that's not really true. We change our understanding of it. We still keep our how do you say, control system, our navigation equipment. It's like the spiritual phrase about Maya, and Maya being the world out there. Once you see through the illusion that there's only one, everything is made of the same, Maya doesn't disappear, but the illusion of Maya disappears. Your ignorance about the world disappears. The appearance of the world stays. I think that's all I wanted to say in this episode. I guess the real invitation is actually to perform the investigation. To be like curious children, even though we have had our sense perceptions for decades, many of us many decades. It's kind of a big, you can discover a lot by approaching them in a completely new way. Not taking anything for granted that you believe about them. If you find this content interesting, don't forget to subscribe to Consciousness and Me. And if you have any questions, any sharings or anything, warmly welcome to share it in the comments below. And I hope to see you again soon.